Hello. Is Chitra there?
Yes, everybody has joined. They are all there. People are joining in now.
I am here.
Chitra, don't let others in. Let's just coordinate first and then. Okay.
All right. So just to be sure, ma'am, I'll be looking after the letting in and keeping people on mute, right? Hello.
Hello, Chitra. Let people in now. Yes, let people
Yeah,
in.
ma'am.
I
All
think
right.
we are ready.
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah. प्रोफेसर माधव आड़ा, आपका स्वागत है. हम लोग जस्ट ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं.
नमस्कार.
नमस्कार. नमस्कार. Chitra, Professor Pradeep Trikha has joined. So please switch on his video and unmute him.
Sure.
प्रोफेसर यशस्चन भी आ गए।
आ गए हैं सर। नमस्ते सर। प्रोफेसर प्रदीप
वेलकम
त्रिखा,
सर, वेलकम सर, वेलकम।
वेलकम।
Very happy to be with you.
Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah. Videos.
So nice to see you, sir. Professor Pradeep
Good
Trikha,
to-
Professor
Yes,
Shitanshu
ma'am.
ji.
It is
Madhav
indeed a
Maharaj ji.
pleasure.
It is indeed a pleasure to have you in our midst.
Thank you, ma'am. You have made it possible and to see you for the first time.
So you're not audible. We can't hear you.
Now can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. Is it now? Is it audible?
Yes, yes, yes. You're audible.
Okay, good enough.
Good enough. Should we begin?
So,
We have.
ma'am, I am really obliged and thankful to your department. Yeah, over to you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Should we wait for 2 minutes because there are some people who are still joining, or should we begin? It's almost
As you please, ma'am.
31. Yeah.
As you please.
Well, namaskar. On behalf of the Department of English and Modern European Languages, University of Lucknow, I welcome you to a panel discussion on Meera. And it is indeed a very special moment for us. We have in our midst Padamshri Professor Shitanshu Yashaschan, an extraordinary scholar, creative writer, and translator. We have the original author, Professor Madav, his well-received study of Meera, Pachrang Chola, Pahar Sakhiri is a work in Hindi, and it has been translated by Professor Pradeep Trikha in English as Meera versus Meera. Meera versus Meera. Today, we are happy to welcome our revered guests to a panel discussion, Translating Meera, Shifting Paradigms. We have in our midst Professor Shitanshu Yashaschan, one of the leading contemporary Gujarati literature's eminent representatives, a poet, playwright, translator, and academic. He has received several awards. He has been the recipient of Sahitya Academy Award in the year 1987 for his significant work, Jatayu. He received Padamshri in 2006 from the Government of India. He has authored 3 books of poetry. He worked as Vice Chancellor, Saurashtra University. He was there as a UGC Emeritus Professor and National Lecturer, as well as Chief Editor of the Encyclopedia of Indian Literature, published by Sahitya Academy. His doctoral work at Indiana University, USA, was in comparative literature, and at the University of Bombay in Indian and Western poetics. He has also been awarded a Fulbright Scholarship and a Ford West European Fellowship for Research in Comparative Literature. He has taught as Professor and Chair of Gujarati at the MS University of Baroda from 1972. He was a visiting professor at the Sorbonne University, Paris, the Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, and Jadavpur University, Kolkata. His creative and critical theory work is mainly in Gujarati, but has been widely translated into Hindi and other languages. He has translated several works of poetry, drama, and criticism from English to Gujarati. His adaptation of Peter Schaffer's Equus was hailed as a landmark play in modern Gujarati theatre. We welcome you to this panel discussion, sir. And as a scholar with a great interest in Meera, we'll be very happy if you share your valuable insights on the book Meera versus Meera. Over to you, sir.
Professor Ranuji, It's an honor to be a part of this program that you have organized. Shows newer directions in which the best of our departments of English have been moving. And this integration of all the languages, all the literary cultures of India is happening. So I'm very happy to be with you at your university. Professor Madav Hada and Professor Pradeep Trika, they really deserve our gratitude and great pleasure, because Professor Trika's translation is really so engaging. It reads almost as a book in Indian language, because the turn of phrases and so on. So Meera is not alienated by this, either by the Department of English or by extraordinary translation of Professor Pradeep Trika. Professor Madav Hada has done a path-breaking work here. There is a long tradition of writing about Meera in several Indian languages. But the mix between myth and history, between bhakti and kavita, between the needs of present day and the actualities of the past. Now, this has been a very difficult area, and many great scholars have floundered. Professor Madav Hada has rightly traced all these affectionate, hardworking researchers and writers who write about Meera, right from the colonial period in which much of our present-day confusion originates. So Colonel Todd of Rajasthan, excellent account of Todd's travels and his meeting with popular sources, the analytic that Meera versus Meera. So the first thing I would like to mention is that the middle term is very important. Versus. I'm reminded of Nietzsche contra Wagner by Nietzsche. He admired Wagner in his younger days and fell out because of the loudness of Wagner's music. So just as this contra or versus is an important contribution of Professor Madav Hada to this, because he interrogates not only the myth-making impulse of any people, and especially of Indian people, but he also interrogates the historical narratives. Let me conclude by this segment by saying that Kavi Nanalal, one of the greatest Gujarati poets, he wrote a long section of a series of his books, and he called Meerabai Maharani Meerabai. No, this princely connection he evoked quite well, because Meerabai in Gujarat is Sadhvi, is someone who has given up everything. But Nanalal refers, just as Madav Hada does, to the queen. But Maharani, she was never Maharani. She was queen of the Yuvarani, but not Maharani. And Madav Hada brings out these nuances and shades of both history and myth-making. So I'm very happy to be associated with this book now for the second time. And Professor Ranu, we could kind of converse a little bit more if you wish.
Thank you, sir, for explaining to us how there is a mix of myth and history as far as the character of Meera is concerned. In her own lifetime, Meera traveled extensively and she had a deep affinity with Gujarat. I would like you to share your own understanding of her affinity. And as far as her own poetry is concerned, it is a poetry of love and longing. It is also a voice of rebellion. Now, for someone who belonged to a very traditional society, how easy or how difficult was it for her to break the stereotypes? You know, she tried to break the stereotypes, and she was not the usual woman. She is seen as an iconic figure in India. Someone who defies stereotypes, not this, not that. Her love for Gujarat and her affinity, and also her defiance. I would like you to take it further.
So amongst the various strengths and loveliness of Madav Hada's book, I also consider his description of geography to be an important part of the strength, the uniqueness of this book. Now, what is cultural geography? We tend to see geography in our own terms of present day. Most of authors have been using term Rajasthan. As Professor Hada has rightly pointed out, Rajasthan was a term invented by Colonel Todd to describe this whole. But Madav Hada uses Mewar, Mewat, Marwar, and so on. So Meera is claimed by whole of Rajasthan, but she has a specific location which is very important. It is a nuance of Mewar and Mewat and their historical traditions, which gives Meera her micro-identity. So not macro-identity, but micro-identity of Meera is to be discovered by a historian and a writer on poetics or literature. That's what Madav Hada has been doing. So when it comes to Gujarat, see, Gujarati literature claims Meerabai as their own. Narsi and Meera are sort of Gujarati poets for us. And we know that like Krishna, Meerabai came to Gujarat to die. Krishnalal Sridharani, a Gujarati poet who lived in Delhi in America for a long time, he describes Saurashtra as Krishna Prabhu ne Marwa Alayak Desh, a place chosen by Sri Krishna to die. So Meerabai also. So this death, the birth and death, is what connects not macro Rajasthan and macro Gujarat, but micro Mewat, Mewar, and micro Dwarika. To place the birth and death of the person and the poet. Death of the poet in the sense that Meerabai became invisible, adrashya, in Dwarika temple. And even today they say that this is the last part of her sari that you can see in this temple. So what is this? Rilke used to say that a poem is not to be completed, it is to be abandoned. So there is open-endedness about Meera's life. And that is something which combines, which unites myth-making and history and poetry. So myth, history, and poetry are united by this open-endedness of Meera's person and also Meera's poetry. So many Gujarati poets and Mewar and poets from Hindi and so on. Meera ke Prabhu Giridhar Nagar. You write that and it becomes a poem by Meera. Of course, researchers distinguish. But the point is that there is an open-endedness. And Narsi Mehta is also Bane Narsayo, and it becomes a Narsi Mehta poem, open-endedness. People use that name to pass through history, to unite history, and to sing of anxieties and aspirations of each age of cultural history of India. So one of the, Meera and Professor Madav Hada has rightly pointed out that Meera is a poet of that category, an open-ended person, an open-ended poet. And that's how Gujarat, that is Dwarika, and Rajasthan, that is Mewat and Mewad, combine into a unity which is simultaneously historical and mythological, simultaneously social and literary. And this versus Meera assumes its greatest significance when, with the help of this book, we discover these so many connections. Professor Ranuji, I think we might move on to the next.
Thank you, sir, for bringing out her micro-identity with such subtlety. Because the very idea of Meera is certainly endless. You know, she is unstoppable and unclosed.
Yes.
And this is a distinct mark of her personality, because she can neither be contained nor can she be defined or interpreted with a single lens. And you put it so beautifully. Thank you, sir. I will now move on to the author, Professor Madav Hada. Professor Madav Hada का ये ओरिजिनल शोध ग्रंथ है, जिस पर उन्होंने बहुत मेहनत करी है, और अपनी इस पुस्तक पर उन्होंने पे काम करने से पहले हमें ये पता चलता है, साफ जाहिर होता है कि उन्होंने इस पे बहुत पढ़ाई करी है, बहुत उन्होंने लेखों को पढ़ा है। मैं ये जानना चाहूंगी प्रोफेसर माधव हाड़ा जी कि आपको इस पुस्तक को लिखने की प्रेरणा किससे मिली और इसको लिखने में आपको कितना समय लगा?
सबसे पहले मैं लखनऊ विश्वविद्यालय के अंग्रेजी विभाग और आप उसकी अध्यक्ष रेणु उनियाल जी, जो आज संयोजन कर रही है कार्यक्रम का, उनके प्रति हृदय से कृतज्ञ हूँ कि उन्होंने इस पुस्तक को इस योग्य पाया कि उस पर चर्चा हो। मेरे बहुत आत्मीय, जिनका मुझ पर बहुत स्नेह है, प्रोफेसर शितांशु यशश्चंद्र जी का भी हृदय से कृतज्ञ हूँ कि हमने यहाँ इस किताब पर बात करने के लिए दूसरी बार उनको कष्ट दिया। ये इसलिए कि वे देश के कुछ महत्वपूर्ण लोगों में हैं जिनकी जड़ें अपने देश की संस्कृति में। ये भारतीय, मुझे लगता है, परंपरा में देश बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। अक्सर हमारे यहाँ, हम जिस देश में रहते हैं, वहाँ सार्वदेशिक संस्कृति की कल्पना बहुत मुश्किल काम है। इतना वैविध्य है कि यदि आप सार्वदेशिक कल्पना करने लगे संस्कृति की, तो हमसे बहुत कुछ छूट जाएगा। और यशस्वी चंद्र जी उन बहुत कम लोगों में से हैं जिन्होंने इस देश को बहुत गहराई से समझा है, और इस देश में उनके साहित्य की, उनके रचना कर्म की जड़ें, मैं उनके प्रति हृदय से कृतज्ञ हूँ कि उन्होंने यहाँ, और हमारे मित्र प्रोफेसर प्रदीप त्रिखा तो हैं ही हैं, उनके प्रति तो क्या आभार व्यक्त करूं। आपने जो पूछा है उस संबंध में मैं 2-3 बातें कहना चाहता हूँ। दरअसल मीरा से संबंध आपका बहुत पहले से शुरू हो जाता है, खासतौर पर हम जिस क्षेत्र में रहते हैं। बहुत बचपन में आप मीरा पढ़ने लगते, बाद में पढ़ने और पढ़ाने का संबंध भी बना, और इस दौरान मुझे बराबर लगा कि वो पढ़ते और पढ़ाते हुए कि वो हमारे दूसरे संत भक्त कवियों से अलग और खास है, और ये अलग और खास ही इस किताब का प्रस्थान बना मेरे लिए। वहीं से मैंने शुरू किया। 2-3 संकल्प जो मैंने मन में रखे और आज सम्मान्य यशश्चंद्र जी ने भी उनकी ओर संकेत किया है कि एक मैं किसी रूढ़ी और रूपक में, किसी विमर्श के रूपक में, किसी विचारधारा के रूपक में, किसी प्रचलित रूपक में मीरा को समझने की कोशिश नहीं करूंगा कि क्योंकि उनकी कविता या उनका व्यक्तित्व ऐसा है ही नहीं। आप उनके संबंध में कोई एक निष्कर्ष निकालिए, वो तत्काल उस निष्कर्ष को लांग कर बाहर आ जाएगी दूसरे ही पद में। ये उनकी कविता की इतनी लचीली, इतनी समावेशी, इतनी उदार कविता है। और सम्माननीय शितांशु जी ने संकेत किया कि वो एंडलेस, एक वो हमारे जनसाधारण की कविता भी है। हमारा जनसाधारण अपने स्मृति और संस्कार में उसको निरंतर जीवंत रखता है। इसलिए हमने अपने आवेग, अपनी भावनाएं, अपनी इच्छाएं सब उसमें शामिल कर दिए। इसलिए मीरा की कविता का कोई एक रूप एक नहीं बन सकता। एक मैंने ये भी देखा कि केवल मीरा की कविता के आधार पर उसके संबंध में कोई निष्कर्ष निकालना बहुत मुश्किल काम है, क्योंकि मैंने कहा कि वो सबकी कविता है। इसलिए मैंने मीरा के जीवन और समाज की रूपरेखा बनाते समय एक लंबा ऐतिहासिक परिप्रेक्ष्य अपने सामने रखा। मध्यकाल में आवागमन के साधन नहीं थे, संचार के साधन नहीं थे, परिवर्तन की गति बहुत धीमी थी, परिवर्तन बहुत तीव्र गति से नहीं होते थे। इसलिए मैंने बहुत लंबा ऐतिहासिक परिप्रेक्ष्य रखा समझने के लिए उनको, सारा का सारा। वो बहुत जरूरी है। यदि आप अपने एक छोटे से कालखंड में और खासतौर पर अपने समय के मानकों से उनको समझना चाहेंगे तो बहुत मुश्किल हो जाएगा। एक और बात जो हमारी औपनिवेशिक, हमारा प्रशिक्षण, हमारा अभ्यास, हमारा संस्कार, हमारी स्मृति में औपनिवेशिक चेतना के अवशेष अब भी हैं, बहुत गहराई से हैं, और हम अपने देशज श्रोताओं को हिकारत से देखते हैं, नजर के देखते हैं। उनके प्रति हमारा रवैया थोड़ा हिकारत का भी होता है, उपेक्षा का भी होता है, अवहेलना का भी होता है। लेकिन मैंने आग्रह पूर्वक उन सब देशज श्रोताओं को मीरा की व्यक्तित्व की, मीरा के व्यक्तित्व की बुनावट को समझने में इस्तेमाल किया। मुझे लगता है कि ये सारे देशज स्रोत हमारे जनसाधारण की सांस्कृतिक भाषा भी है। किसी समाज को समझना है, और खासतौर पर हमारे देश जैसे जिसमें संस्कृति में हमारी जड़ें बहुत गहरी है, देश में हमारी जड़ें बहुत गहरी है, तो ये बहुत जरूरी है कि हम उस सांस्कृतिक भाषा को, उस सांस्कृतिक व्यवहार को अच्छी तरह से समझें। मैंने कोशिश की कि हम अपने सांस्कृतिक व्यवहार को अच्छी तरह से समझें। मीरा के बारे में जितनी भ्रांतियां आज प्रचलित है, वे सब इस सांस्कृतिक व्यवहार की अनभिज्ञता के कारण भी है। आप यदि नहीं समझते कि राणा और रावल में क्या फर्क है, तो फिर आप ये नहीं समझ पाएंगे कि मीरा ने राणा किसको संबोधित किया था। हिंदी के बहुत सारे आलोचकों ने, बहुत सारे साहित्यकारों ने ये किया कि राणा को उसका पति मान लिया, जबकि राणा कभी, उसके पति कभी सत्तारूढ़ नहीं हुए। सत्तारूढ़ होने पर ही हम उसको राणा कहते हैं। तीसरी बात जो मुझे लगता है कि एक और बात जो मैंने ध्यान में रखी, उसके बाद मैं अपनी बात से खत्म करूंगा। सम्माननीय शितांशु जी है या आप भी है। एक जो बात सबसे महत्वपूर्ण है वो है हमारा दैनंदिन जीवन व्यवहार। प्राय हम शास्त्रों पर निर्भर करने लगते हैं। शास्त्र हमारे आदर्श तो हैं कई बार, लेकिन वे हमारे जीवन व्यवहार में उस तरह से शामिल नहीं है जिस तरह से होते हैं। हम अपनी सुविधा से उनका सरलीकरण करते हैं। इसलिए मैंने सबसे पहले जो हमारे दैनंदिन जीवन व्यवहार है हमारा, मैंने उसको आधार बनाया। आप आश्चर्य करेंगे, देश में ऐसा कोई डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं है। मैंने पहले भी शायद शितांशु से और जिक्र किया था। राजस्थान में खासतौर पर मारवाड़ में एक ऐसा डॉक्यूमेंट है। ये राजस्थान संज्ञा सही कहा शितांशु जी ने कि उसका कोई अर्थ नहीं है। मारवाड़ एक सांस्कृतिक संज्ञा है, मेड़ता एक सांस्कृतिक संज्ञा है, मेवाड़ एक सांस्कृतिक संज्ञा है, सौराष्ट्र एक सांस्कृतिक संज्ञा है, और आप मारवाड़ में एक डॉक्यूमेंट बना 1891 की मर्दमशुमारी के समय, जातियों की उत्पत्ति और रीति रिवाज। और एजाइनस ने कहा कि भाई जब जनगणना हो रही है तो ये भी इकट्ठा करवा लो, लेकिन शास्त्र आधार नहीं होना चाहिए। जो पंच पटेल हैं उनके संस्कार और स्मृति में क्या है अपनी जाति के बारे में, वे क्या कहते हैं, उसको आधार बनाकर एक दस्तावेज तैयार किया गया, जातियों की उत्पत्ति और रीति रिवाज। भारत में शायद अपने ढंग का ये पहला और अनोखा दस्तावेज है। मैंने दैनंदिन व्यवहार को समझने के लिए, जातियों के आचरण को, मीरा जिस समाज से संबंधित है उसके सांस्कृतिक व्यवहार को समझने के लिए इसको इस्तेमाल किया है। प्रस्थान में ये 2-3 बातें शामिल थी और मुझे लगा कि मैंने अंत तक पहुंचते पहुंचते ये जो प्रस्थान था उसने मीरा को समझने में बहुत मदद की।
शुक्रिया माधव हाड़ा जी, आपने इस पुस्तक में कई भ्रांतियों का खंडन किया है। हम लोग मीरा को लेकर के जो एक दृष्टिकोण लेकर के चलते थे उसके विविध रूपों को आपने प्रकट किया है। और ये खास बात है इस किताब की कि इसमें आपने उनके जीवन के विभिन्न पहलुओं को लिया है और उन पर अच्छी खासी चर्चा करी है, स्टडी करी है, खूब अच्छा सा शोध किया है। कितने आपने जेम्स टॉड को लिया है और कुमकुम संगारी, कितने सारे रिसर्चर्स जिन्होंने पहले मीरा के ऊपर काम किया है उनको लेकर के आपने उनका एक बहुत ही खूबसूरत चित्रण किया है। मैं ये भी देख रही हूँ कि आपने मीरा रचना संचयन पे भी काम किया है, उनकी कविताओं को लेकर के उनकी भी स्टडी करी है। और मैं अपने दर्शकों को बताना चाहूंगी कि आजकल प्रोफेसर माधव हाड़ा इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ एडवांस स्टडी शिमला में एज अ फेलो कार्यरत हैं। आप सुखाड़िया यूनिवर्सिटी, मोहनलाल सुखाड़िया यूनिवर्सिटी उदयपुर में हिंदी विभाग में विभागाध्यक्ष और प्रोफेसर के पद पर थे और आपने एक नहीं अनेक पुस्तकें लिखी हैं। आपने मुनि जिन विजय, कथेटर, सीढ़ियां चढ़ता मीडिया, मीडिया साहित्य और संस्कृति, कविता का पूर्ण दृश्य और तनी हुई रस्सी पर, ऐसी कई किताबें लिखी हैं और शोध लिखे हैं। और आपने जो ये काम, एक अद्भुत काम किया है, मीरा पचरंग चोला लिख करके, पहाड़ सखीरी ये पुस्तक लिख करके आपने हम सभी के लिए एक आने वाली पीढ़ी के लिए एक ऐसा आयाम खड़ा कर दिया है जिस पर हम जहां से हम अगर मीरा को देखेंगे और पढ़ेंगे तो हम पाएंगे कि उनकी जिंदगी अपने आप में एक विलक्षण शक्ति थी, एक विलक्षण प्रतिभा की महिला थी वो। उनके अंदर शी हैड एन अमेजिंग आउटपुट एंड शी वाज एन एक्स्ट्रॉर्डिनरी वुमन। And I'm really happy and thankful to you, Professor Madav Hada, कि आपने ये पुस्तक लिखी और उसके बाद इसको प्रदीप त्रिखा जी ने इसको अंग्रेजी में इसका अनुवाद किया और इसके चलते ये हम सब दर्शकों पाठकों के बीच में पहुंची है। Thank you, Professor Madav Hada. We'll get back to you. But next, I would like to invite Professor Pradeep Trikha, who is the translator of this book, Meera versus Meera. He is Professor of English at Mohanlal Sukhadia University. You know, when I opened the book, the first thing that struck me was that how Meera is not to be looked at as a saffron-clad woman with a halo. You know, the way the images of Meera that we see in Indian cinema or in popular literature is always of a woman with a halo around her. She never went on a journey, says Professor Pradeep Trikha, that she never went on a journey with a tanpura or a veena in her hand, but she lived like a princess. She had a retinue of servants and caretakers. She traveled extensively and she traveled with her retinue. It's also interesting to read about the influence of Lieutenant Colonel James Todd, because he's the one who has traced her journey. I would like Professor Pradeep Trikha to talk about this journey, Pachrang Chola Pahar Sakhiri, say, to Meera versus Meera. The whole purpose of translating the text, he very rightly says, is to enliven the flavors and to inhale the sounds and explore the sensitive nuances of each rhythm in translation. Because when we talk of translation, even Umberto Eco talks of the ideal of intertranslatability. as a solution for the future. So I would like you to share your insights, Professor Pradeep Trikha, while you trace the journey. How do you look at this spirit of social collaboration when you translate from one language to another? Professor Pradeep Trikha.
Professor Unyal. And at the very outset, I extend my thanks and appreciation to entire Department of English and Cultural Studies at Lucknow University. And I am honored to once again in the company, or I'm really honored to have Professor Shitanshu ji this evening. And of course, Professor Madav Hada is not only a dear friend, but I think he now says that I have not made a wrong choice. My choice was all right, because the book is being discussed in academic circles and it is quite popular, and it is being purchased by the readers. And I would like to begin with a few important aspects, because I feel that translation allowed me to exercise my potential for creativity also. It was negotiation with another language. So I tried, the creativity lied on the middle. I was negotiating with the language in which I am trained, and of course the language which I know as a mother tongue. So the creativity lied somewhere in the middle. And that is where I could enjoy doing the things, as you rightly pointed out, and even Professor Yashaschan has talked about certain important aspects of this translation, that there is a term called verses. And then how do we go about the cultural geography of Mewar? Basically, I'm not born and brought up in Mewar, but this book has helped me to sap into myself the Mewari culture, and then look at it from the writer's point of view. Because the best thing about this book to be translated was that writer was by my side to help me. And anywhere I used to get stuck, he would come to my rescue to explain the nuances of the language which he has written the book in. And as far as the open-endedness of the book is concerned, I feel that if you take up the book in your hand and you flip over the contents, table of contents, you will find that one single word is used for each chapter: life. So that is also very important. I have not picked up any idiom or any phrase to explain life. So that is how the original also stands. And I think when we are translating, there is a kind of art which gets involved. It is not technique always. You have to have the felicity of both the languages, so that even if it is the complex relationship, you are able to highlight even the complexity of two languages. So that is one thing. Another thing is that the implication of this kind of proposition is far-reaching. The place of English in translation in India, they try to create, two lingo cultures. English has its own culture and Hindi also has its own culture. So that is a cultural negotiation which goes on constantly when you are translating history, poetry, society. So many things are there. So this allows you to say something which actually you have not lived through, but now you are living through. It is a living experience. Moreover, the best part of this book was when I started doing the last chapter, that is image construction of Meera. How over the ages, we have constructed, reconstructed, dismantled Meera in a number of ways. And then, as Professor Hada has also pointed out, that our orientation is basically Western orientation in terms of writing history. We never look at our own indigenous sources, our own sources which are lying buried still either in the archives or in, the places like Chittor. The critics or the writers before us were visiting Rajasthan, collecting some material from Rajasthan, and then going back to Delhi, sitting in their AC rooms and then writing about Meera. Now, that is not actually the way. I think we both traveled to the places where Meera had been, at least in Mewar. And that makes all the difference. Because still, culturally, there is not a drastic change in Rajasthan. As Hada Sahab says that in our daily practices, we still live the culture the way it was. So we may say that we are backward, but in a way, the society which is always regarded to be backward was one of the most liberal societies in the Middle Ages. Meera protest never was asked to go for sati, and she never went even. So, if the society was not liberal, then how could that be possible? Remarriage was permissible. Society was more democratic, that if you lose the battle, you can come to the lower strata of society and still you are working and nobody is going to snatch your Rajput card. So these cultural, liberalization efforts of that society, and moreover, if we discover at this point that Meera was given the property by her father-in-law, nowadays it is not possible. Her father-in-law had allotted her the Jagirdari, and that was her source of revenue, which allowed her to do what she felt like doing, to do what she was trying to live through. And I think going on the religious path was also her own strategy to survival. Had she never had a public following or folk not following her, it would have been very easy for Rana to see that she is gone. Because she had such a huge following, I think that made all the difference for her to survive. And she keeps on moving in her life. She never looks back to Mewar. She is going to Vrindavan, she is going to even down south. And again, there is a myth that she dissolved herself into the statue of, Krishna. So I think that this is a really stupendous journey, and discover and rediscover Meera. So it is construction and reconstruction. There is no deconstruction. I won't say that, well, Derrida talks about deconstruction, so we have been doing this. No, we are just putting the facts together. We are saying that in history, this is what is said, and in the Western history, this is what is perceived, and by the Indian historians whose minds were trained more or less like post-colonial, historians, because they were not looking at Meera in the right perspective. One thing. Secondly, Meera's reconstruction of image, we have to keep in mind that she was living her life through royalty, where men were recorded, they were given full space in history. They were given entirely, it was to be written by Charans and Bhatts from the point of view of the king and his good works. But women history was written by, some women historians which were in the
Rani Mangas.
Yes, Rani Mangas were
Mangas.
writing. So Rani Mangas were again very rich source of history. So I feel that when you start rediscovering your own past, Indian cultural past is so rich, and your indigenous sources, your vernacular sources, again, I'm sorry to use this word vernacular, I should have used traditional. The traditional sources are extremely rich. And these traditional sources, irrespective of who has written it, whether the writer is Muslim or a Hindu or whoever, but these sources must be looked into because they give you the perspective which has already gone wrong, which has already been influenced by the West. So we don't need West to throw light on our sources which can be considered as historical sources. So the traditional sources are the catch of this entire work. And would you believe that Meera could had the courage to debate with Pandas of Nathdwara? It is a remarkable incident where she does not want to toe the line of Vaishnavites as they are. She has her own way of looking at Vaishnavas. She has her own way of looking at Shivites. So these rich sources, I think they actually instigate you, motivate you to do or to write something. Then Professor Hada has gone a step forward by saying that what Amartya Sen says about Indian culture, what Kumkum Sangari says or Parita Mukta says. So these are some of the important, take-off points which had triggered me to work on this book. And I don't know, like as you said, one of my friends had told me, well, I don't need to read the original one now. I have read yours, it is done. So I said, why don't you read the original also? Because that may give you another perspective. So I think yes, Meera in Hindi was much talked about after the book came out, Pacharang Chola Peher Sakhiri. And if not the same, even this book is being talked about because this book, as Professor Yashaschan had said, is open-ended. There are many take-off points from where the researchers can start working on Meera. It is open-ended text. We are not saying that this is the final word. Neither Meera says that this is the final word. So we have just put on a new kind of spectacles to look at Meera and visualize Meera. And maybe I think this should be the right perspective when we are looking at any historical figure. We cannot ignore, actually we should not ignore the traditional sources. All traditional sources are extremely relevant. I think Professor Shitanshu ji will agree with it, that all these sources are extremely relevant if we really want to know what culture we have inherited. There was no amount of theory. I have not involved myself in translation theories at all. Hada Sahab gave me the free, he asked me, you are free to translate the way you want to do. And that was my motivation. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Professor Pradeep Trikha. My own reading has never led me to believe that she was a weak woman, because I've always seen her as an icon of struggle, courage, and certainly representative of her times, a woman with a mind of her own. Hadaji, in your work, and has talked about her as a woman of flesh and blood, and a woman who was caught up in the struggle for dignity and freedom. The section when we focus on her poetry, we find that she defies traditions, and she is she openly talks about her relationship with her in-laws, where she says that Saas Hateli, Nanat Chugeli, Devar Det Mujgari. She is bold. She expresses herself, and she does it so beautifully. So we find that she, in doing so, is shedding all inhibitions, because that traditional Indian Bahu should be, like this. She should be very composed and calm, and she breaks all those norms. And it's interesting to see that when you discuss Meera, you don't discuss her merely as a saint, but you also look at her as a real woman a woman with her dreams, with her desires, a woman with her angst. So there's a variety of emotions that the book talks about. Professor Pradeep Trikha, would you like to share your own insights?
Yes, I think, yes, she's a woman of in flesh and blood. Only thing is, when you idealize the characters, or especially the historical characters, then there are certain ideals which we as Indians we try to look at in a woman. And in pre-independent India, these ideals were different, and in post-independent India, these ideals are different. In pre-independent India, or even after, just immediately after the independence, I think we were happy to have an ideal wife, but we were also happy to have the outside women, modern. So they should be outgoing, but not my wife. So this problem of double standards with the society is always existing there. But Meera goes a step forward because she expresses what she feels. She doesn't stop herself from expressing herself. No doubt, I mean, there are, there is a couplet which I have translated in which she tries to compare that there can be no mangoes in Mewar. There can only be lemons.
Yeah.
Because mango is a sweet fruit, and of course, it is a citrus fruit. So citricity of life is also expressed. If we look at it from, she had such experiences in Mewar. So whatever she suggests, she does it in a very suggestive way. But wherever she wants to be aggressive, she is aggressive also. When she realizes that maybe her life is threatened in Mewar, she tries to get back to Meerta. And from Meerta, she goes to Vrindavan. Because her own father and uncle, they were thrown out of Meerta because of Maldev. So she thought that maybe not staying in Mewar would have helped her to save herself. And of course, because she had economic resources at her disposal, it was easy for her to move around. And whenever she moved around, she doesn't hesitate even to challenge Goswami. That there is only one male in Vrindavan. I thought rest were the women. Because he said that I will not meet the women. So these are certain things. But what I'm trying to suggest is the most important thing I feel is that regarding your question, all answers lie in chapter number 6, which talks about image construction. Because image construction is important in history. So this is not merely a book of Meera's poetry or Meera's life. It is basically also a book of Meera's history. How she has been over the centuries interpreted in number of ways. In the beginning of the book, we say that you can take away from Meera anything you want. Marxists will try to look at her from a Marxist point of view that, well, the woman was in palaces and she was exploited by men and so on and so forth. That is a Marxist take. Even feminists will talk about her like the same. But the couplet which you quoted, she is actually threatening the feminism itself. I mean, she is opposing even women. And men are not coming right in the middle to threaten her. And if they come, she finds her own way out.
Yes.
So she was a true spokesperson of even women folk.
That's why somewhere she has the courage to say that Thara des mein saad nahi hai, log base sab kudu. She says that, which is a very strong statement, isn't it?
Yes, it is a very strong statement. So she liberates not only herself, but also the women of her own century. So if you know, our society is something is a society where the cultures, they filter from top to bottom. Behaviors, they filter. The king's behavior may be, you know, colonial behavior, but when male interact with women, it comes to the same thing. So that is how the Indian society has been. As nowadays we say that fashion filtered from Bollywood. In those days, these were also fashionable things, that how to express male hegemony. But women were equally strong. I won't say that they were not strong. Meera is an epitome of a very strong woman. So she does everything. And if you look at, you know, image construction, it is still going on. We are living in the age of globalization. We have media images before us. Gulzar's Meera is a different Meera from the original Meera. Amar Chitra Katha's Meera is a different Meera. Amar Chitra Katha was very popular among all of us when we were students say as a school student, and that is where I was introduced to Meera. So this time, when I was talking about, you know, say when I was translating this text, I realized that Meera's popularity during 60s was different, during 80s it was different, and now when people talk about Meera, it is slightly different. Because we can't escape the culture in which we are living right now. So that is the point which I want to make regarding your question. I think I have done something quite sensible. I have been babbling too long. Yeah.
Absolutely. Professor Trika, here's a question from one of our students, Akanksha Pandey.
Okay,
and she says, I request you to share with us what are the things which you had to keep in mind while translating the text.
Okay. Now that is I think she herself might be a translator, so she has asked this question. Anyway, yeah, as a student, I would like to say that while translating Meera Pachrang Chola Peher Sakiri, I had to keep in mind that I do not divulge too much from the idiomatic use of language. If I can, I tried my level best to come as near as possible. But if I was failing, then as I said, I had the writer by my side. He came to my rescue. Because there would be, you know, at times, for example, I was not aware about that what is Kasumal Rang. And had I used the word maroon, it would have killed the spirit. So I asked Professor Hada to allow me to use it in original, to retain the original. To which he said, all right, because Kasumal cannot be maroon. It is fusion of two colors, or sometimes even more. I think Professor Hada would like to say something about it, or even Shitanshu ji would like to say something about it.
Yes,
so using the closer idiom, you have to have your own writer by your side. And it is very difficult to translate phrases and idioms. You can translate the narrative. That is very easy. Narration of history can be translated as it comes to you. And the interesting thing is that I have translated Professor Hada. I have not translated Amartya Sen. So it is retranslation of what Amartya Sen had said. I have not used the original text. Because for me, the original was Pachrang Chola Peher Sakiri.
Now, related to it, this is another question from one of our students, Vidushi. Vidushi wants to know why Meera versus Meera and not Meera and Meera, because this Meera is also that Meera. They are the same. So why
Okay.
specifically versus?
You see that in this book or in original Hindi, when we were discussing about that what should be the title in English, then Hada Sahab suggested that there is a line in Meera's couplets, Sone kaat na lagi. Gold never rusts. But this title was perhaps not so attractive for the publisher. We both are thankful to our publisher that Ma'am Aditi Maheshwari, she is MD of Vani Prakashan. She suggested, she suggested that why not Meera versus Meera? Now that was a catchphrase actually. Meera and Meera would not have conveyed something. As Professor Yashaschan has said, that verses is important. It can be interpreted a number of ways. To me, one way is the Meera which has always been looked upon, and this is a new Meera. Then Meera had to play multiple roles during her lifetime. She was a princess, she was also a sage, she was moving around with, the then other bhakti poets. You go through the book, you come to know that while she was growing up, she was trained by her father and her elder father to be an excellent archer, sword fighter, or even a horse rider, because that is the part of Rajasthani culture which is to be conveyed, which is to be taught to all royal family princesses. And it is not that, it is only, why is it that Rana Sanga had traveled all across Rajasthan to find the appropriate daughter-in-law? And it was in Mewat, in Meerta, that he realizes that here is an intelligent woman who could make the changes in history. And it is wrong perception to say that Meera was opposed by her husband to worship Krishna. Never. On the contrary, he was helping her out. He was encouraging her, whatever she wanted to do. So to say that this verses comes because of one reason, or rather multiple reasons, I would say. Verses is, one is historical Meera, and verses stands for vis-a-vis or verses the perceptions about Meera, which are most of the time are not right perceptions. As you just now said, that Meera was in flesh and blood. So she was, what we have reconstructed is the image of Meera out of larger than life. We want to say that it was not larger than life, it was life itself. She was in flesh and blood. She was like any other woman. She admired putting on ornaments. She admired putting on Kasumal Rang ki sari in order to welcome Krishna. So her desires were worldly, her expectations were worldly. So why are we blowing her out of proportion by saying that she was not a normal woman? She was a very normal kind of a, human being. She was compassionate, she was sympathetic, she was all loving. So I think Hada Sahab should say something about this also.
Yes, please.
And Shitanshu ji, please, I would like to have your response, because that is more valuable to me.
This is a question which I could ask even Professor Shitanshu Yashaschan ji, he himself is a translator. He has a question from Adhiraj Dwivedi and he wants to know who will judge a translation is worth it or not? Printing houses, people, or part of society which are talked about? And what are the parameters of judgment?
If you could repeat the question, please.
He says, who will judge a translation, whether it is worth it or not? Is it the printing house or the people or the society which is being talked about? And what are the parameters of judgment of a translation? How do you judge a translation, he says?
Personally, to me, it is the reader's right to read or not to read. Publisher may publish or may not publish. The reader might get hold of the manuscript, and people are known to have done that. Society is too amorphous a thing. We are not conducting a political election when we read a book. It's a very personal experience. Now, deviations in translation. Incidentally, let me confess that as I was listening to both Professor Madav Hada and especially to Professor Pradeep Trika, I shed decades of my years, became quite kind of youthful once again, and was almost enrolled as student in Professor Ranu Unial's university and listening to Professor Pradeep Trika from a bench. It was really that good. And it is all very good that the person who is linking all the three speakers is a lady, is a woman. I was also thinking of, that makes all the difference, that Ranu Unial is asking questions and linking everything else. That's what makes Meera come alive. So she is a woman, not just a person. So this, again, my emphasis is always on the micro. You discover infinity not by expanding, but by, Russell has said that. You cut a foot into half and half and half, and the infinity is in that minutest point, not just the large thing. So Meera is also like that. So I was, two things. I was also reminded, as Professor Pradeep ji was speaking, wonderful. I was reminded of Lal Diyad.
Yeah.
And
Kashmir.
Ananimal. And then women poets from the south. Andal, for example. So now Ananimal is someone, Kashmiri, that sort of gives the same experience of a woman besieged, so to say, not necessarily by political power, but by so many powers. And this experience could be had in full only by a woman. We have Dalit women in medieval Gujarat. And incidentally, Meera's guru was also a Dalit writer. So this whole idea, on the one hand, she is Yuvaragni, she has her retinue, she has money, but on the other hand, she is a woman. And especially in turbulent times. So Lal Diyad, Ananimal, Meera, Andal, these are the multiple dimensions of womanhood. And that is why the magic of the translation works. Pachananga Chola. Pachananga Chola is a very different thing. And Meera versus Meera. So this See, every culture keeps alive so long as there are internal tensions, internal contradictions to pull it forward. The moment a culture tends to become uniphonic instead of polyphonic, too harmonious, probably in our own times, though of course there are so many conflicts all over the world and in South Asia that, they see, Meera, there was an element of defiance. Why Gogaru ba the Meera nachire? Meera didn't just Meera nachire nahi hai. Gogaru ba, I defy you. I put Gogaru like
This is from YouTube.
So this is verses. There are so many. It's not Meera versus Meera and Pacharang Chola. Both the titles combined together. It's also Pacharang Chola. I mean, where the colors meet each other into harmony. It becomes a lovely dress, Pacharang Chola, Sakhiri. This is joy. But on the other hand, the translator, this extraordinary translator, has, of course, with the help of the, there is an element of, salesmanship in Meera versus Meera, but it transcends that. It transcends the publisher's requirements, and Professor Pradeep ji has transcended that by pointing out that Pacharanga Chola, that harmony is also there. There's so much joy in Meera. Munshi, Kaniyalal Munshi used to say that in Gujarati, he used to say, Jivata Jivannu Kachariyo Kari Nakhi. That means, जो जीवन है, उसका बिल्कुल उसको चॉप कर दिया, डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया. ये मध्यकालीन लेखकों ने, उनको जीवन विमुक्त थे, परांगमुक्त थे. अभी मुंशी जी तो बड़े लेखक थे, लेकिन ये बिल्कुल चुप गए. नरसिंह और मीरा जैसा जिंदगी में आनंद लेने वाले कितने थे, आज भी कितने हैं, कितने. प्राय गुगुरु बाद मीरा नाची रहे. When people are after at your throat, you feel like dancing. That has been brought out in this joint title, Pacharanga Chola and Verses. And I think it's only great poet, great as W.H. Auden has said when Yeats died, follow poet, follow right to the bottom of the night. To the bottom of the night, Meera mein hai. Follow poet, follow right to the bottom of the night. In your unconstraining voice, still persuade us to rejoice. The bottom of the night में ही rejoice कर सकते हैं हम. ये दोपहर में नहीं rejoice कर सकते हैं. So this Meera has this bottom of the night quality and rejoicing of the quality. वो पचरंग चोला भी है और verses भी है. तो इतना कम पुस्तकों में, कम अनुवादों में ये सब हो सकता है. तो हम बहुत आभारी है, बहुत धन्यवाद है माधव जी का और प्रदीप जी का कि ये हुआ. और ये हुआ तो लखनऊ यूनिवर्सिटी में हमारी बहन के घर जहाँ हम इलेक्ट्रॉनिकली आ गए हैं सारे. तो ये सारा जो कॉम्बिनेशन है वो बहुत अच्छा लगता है.
It's wonderful listening to you, Professor Yashaschan. The way you have talked about Meera and her celebrating life, how she rejoices and is in tune with the trinkets of her life, the way you described it. So it's so beautiful. I'm really very grateful to all of you for being present here today, but there are one or two questions that are there. And can I ask those questions? Here there's a question from Vedamini Vikram Singh, and she wants to know, she says that we often read Meera as progressive in the Western sense of the term, but a lot of her progressiveness is organic and indigenous and seems to come from bhakti as well. This is something that Professor Shitanshu also referred to. Can you please talk about that angle of bhakti and the importance of her devotion to Krishna? Yes, it's an open question. माधवाड़ा जी, अगर आप इस पे बात करना चाहें, मीरा की भक्ति और उनका कृष्ण के प्रति जो लगाव था.
Yes, sir.
देखिए, मैं A.K. रामानुजन ने एक बात कही है भक्ति के संबंध में कि अक्सर हम भक्ति को एक वचन में बोलते हैं, लेकिन वो एक वचन में है नहीं। भक्ति के इतने रूप हैं। आप गुजरात में जाएंगे तो अलग, सौराष्ट्र में जाएंगे तो अलग, स्त्री के यहाँ अलग, पुरुष के यहाँ अलग, मध्यकाल से पहले अलग, मध्यकाल में अलग। इसलिए भक्ति बहुवचन है। एक दूसरा, ये जो मीरा की भक्ति का मामला है वो ली हुई भक्ति नहीं है, वो कमाई हुई अर्जित भक्ति है। आप यदि ये जो सहजोबाई हैं या दयाबाई हैं उनको पढ़ें तो आपको लगेगा कि वे वही प्रतीक, वही बिंब, वही भाषा इस्तेमाल कर रही हैं जो कबीर करते। उन्होंने लिया है, मीरा ने किसी से लिया नहीं है। खास बात ये है, जैसे मैं एक रचना का उदाहरण हमेशा देता हूं और वो बहुत सुंदर रचना है, चालो अगम के देश काल देखत डरे। और जो प्रतीक इस्तेमाल कर रही है झूठनो, अब ये किसी और मित्र ने सवाल भी पूछा था कि आप इसको केवल राजस्थान मेवाड़ क्यों कह रहे हैं। तो आप देखिए, ये जो आभूषण वो इस पद में इस्तेमाल कर रही है वो केवल मेवाड़ में या मारवाड़ में या मेड़ता में इस्तेमाल होने वाले स्त्रियों के आभूषण। वस्त्र जो इस्तेमाल कर रही है वे भी मेवाड़, मारवाड़ या मेड़ता में इस्तेमाल होने वाले, और गुजरात भी उसमें शामिल करता हूं मैं हमेशा, क्योंकि गुजरात और राजस्थान मध्यकाल में दो सांस्कृतिक इकाइयां नहीं है। ये जॉर्ज ग्रियर्सन का वर्गीकरण है। इसलिए मीरा की भक्ति ये वो अर्जित भक्ति है, ली दी गई भक्ति नहीं है। उसने मना कर दिया वल्लभ संप्रदाय वालों को दीक्षा लेने से। वल्लभ महारानी थी और सभी चाहते थे कि वो उनके प्रभाव क्षेत्र में आए। उसने कहा नहीं, उसने दीक्षा नहीं ली। उसने, इसलिए मीरा के बारे में ये कहा जाता है कि मीरा सुध जायो नहीं, शिष्य न मूंडियो कोई। मीरा का कोई संप्रदाय नहीं बना, सबके संप्रदाय, मीरा का अपना कोई संप्रदाय नहीं बना। दूसरी बात जो ये है कि मीरा की कविता में रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर ने एक अच्छी बात कही कि जो आपके जीवन में है वही तो आप अपने प्रिय को देंगे। जो आपके जीवन में नहीं है वो अपने प्रिय के लिए कहां से लाएंगे। प्रिय यदि लोकोत्तर भी है तो लाएंगे तो देने के लिए जीवन से ही। उनकी बहुत खूबसूरत कविता है रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर की। तो मीरा की कविता में जीवन का निवेश बहुत गहरा है। आप आश्चर्य करेंगे, होली ये हमारे राग द्वेष के क्या कहते हैं उसे, रेचीकरण का उत्सव है, लेकिन मीरा का हर तीसरा चौथा पद होली का है। ये किसी ने वर्षा, मीरा का हर दूसरा तीसरे पद में वर्षा आती है और बहुत सघन रूप में, इंटेंस रूप। जीवन, पेड़ पौधे, वनस्पतियां, जीवन बहुत सघन है मीरा की कविता में। ये जीवन की ये सघनता मध्यकाल के और संत कवियों के नहीं है, ऐसी अद्भुत, और वो भी स्थानिक किस्म की, एकदम लोकल। ये जो जीवन का सघन रूप है। अच्छा, दूसरी बात जो मीरा की कविता में ये है, मीरा और संत भक्तों की तरह अपनी पहचान से बाहर नहीं आती कभी भी। राग द्वेष भी है। वो गुजरात गई तो राणा से कह रही है कि आंबा पाक्या कड़र केड़ी, नींबूड़ा मारे देश, राणा कण पर छोड़ियो देश। एक मैंने देश को छोड़ा, मुझे पता नहीं क्या। ये जो जीवन है। अच्छा, मीरा रिश्तों के बीच में, कोई संत ऐसा भक्त नहीं मिलेगा जो रिश्तों के बीच में, ननद, भाभी, पिता, ससुर, आप उनके दायरे में, उनके बीच में अपनी बात कह रहे हैं जो कह रहे हैं। तो ये मुझे लगता है कि मीरा को समझने के लिए, उसकी भक्ति को समझने के लिए भी भक्ति का जो एक सार्वदेशिक रूप है, उससे अलग प्रकार के हमारे यहाँ भक्ति का क्षेत्रीय नरसिंह मेहता बहुत अद्भुत है। मैंने अभी उनके नरसिंह जीरो मायरो पर लिखा, नहीं, अरे अद्भुत रचना है वो। आप मतलब वो श्री कृष्ण को बैठकर गालियां दे रही है औरतें, कि तेरे दो पिता, तेरे इतनी बीवियां हैं। हाँ, हम अपनी आकांक्षाएं, अपनी इच्छाएं, लोक भगवान श्री कृष्ण 3 लोकों के स्वामी हैं, ब्रह्म है, तो लोक का इससे क्या लेना देना। लोक को तो ऐसा आदमी चाहिए जो जाति बिरादरी में उसकी इज्जत रखे, और वो श्री कृष्ण ऐसे ही हैं, मायरा लेकर जा रहे हैं, जात बिरादरी में इज्जत रख रहे हैं, नरसिंह नाराज हैं। इसलिए मीरा की भक्ति को समझने के लिए अलग मीरा को भक्ति के संस्कार तो बचपन से मिले, ये तो तय है, कृष्ण भक्ति के संस्कार। बाकी तो जो उनके संबंध में कहा गया कि वहां जाकर कन्फ्रंटेशन में आई, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है। मेवाड़ में भी वैष्णव भक्ति उतनी ही प्रचलन में। आप जो कहा गया है, मुझे वे जैसा अभी त्रिखा जी ने कहा है कि कुछ लोग यात्राएं करते हैं एक प्रोजेक्ट लेकर, परियोजना लेकर, और तय कर लेते हैं कि ये है। ऐसा नहीं है। आप यदि उस सांस्कृतिक व्यवहार में लोगों की अपनी सांस्कृतिक भाषा में समझने की कोशिश करें, तो मीरा की भक्ति का भी एक अलग, और जिसे देशज कहते हैं, बिल्कुल स्थानीय वो रूप आपके सामने आए।
धन्यवाद प्रोफेसर माधव हाड़ा जी, आपने इतनी खूबसूरती से चंद शब्दों में ही मीरा की विविधता को बयान किया है। सच बात है, जो मीरा की भक्ति है उसके कई आयाम हैं, वो एक उसमें एक परिदृश्य में नहीं बांधी जा सकती, क्योंकि उसमें अगर उनकी राइटिंग्स को पढ़ें तो हम देखते हैं कि उसमें क्रोध भी है, लज्जा भी है, प्यार भी है, शिकायत भी है, गुस्सा भी है, सभी कुछ तो है। कई तरह के भाव उनकी भक्ति में उमड़ कर आते हैं, और वो कृष्ण को कई रूपों में देखती हैं, एक रूप में बांध के नहीं रखती हैं। आपने बहुत सहजता से हमारे सामने इस बात को रखा है, और आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। एक प्रश्न और है, देयर इज अ क्वेश्चन फॉर यू प्रोफेसर प्रदीप त्रिखा और प्रोफेसर शितांशु यशश्चंद्रा, यू आर फ्री टू आंसर दिस क्वेश्चन। दिस इज अ क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम प्रोफेसर मधु सिंह फ्रॉम द Department of English. Do you think a translator has to face certain challenges while translating a historical character given the time lag?
Well, I think that yes, there are challenges of time lag, but then you see, gradually as you proceed to translation and you get into the text of the written document, then only rescue which comes to you is that already somebody has done the labor, and yours love's labor will not be lost. So what I'm trying to suggest is that research was already being done regarding history. So I never wanted to look into those sources once again to verify them. So historical sources were right before me. Of course, I even tried to read some of the original texts which Professor Hara had used, so that I could gauge that whether the information which is being imparted is to what extent, if I am translating, is authentic one. So of course, I tried to look at some of the historical sources, but not all, that I would say. And to translate something in, right now in present, I won't deny that there is no politics of language. Every language has its own politics. I as a translator could never escape that, because my training was such. So there is a dimension. But before me, Meera is not just Meera the woman, she becomes an agency over a period. agency of change, of transformation. And this I had to keep in mind constantly while doing this work. And if you look at my translator's note, I think I have mentioned somewhere, and this I would like to tell you that ये मेरा कमाल गुनाह सही मगर इसको देख मेरे खुदा तूने रोका मुझे जहां जहां मैं वहां से गुजर गया. तो मेरा कमाल गुनाह सही, गुनाह तो मैंने किया कहीं कहीं, क्योंकि पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ लैंग्वेज को एस्केप करना बड़ा मुश्किल होता है, मगर जहां कहीं रुकावट आई वहां से गुजरना भी मेरे लिए जरूरी था. And I would not hesitate in telling the scholars, because most of them, they belong to English department, that it is continual self-sacrifice, as Eliot had said, continual extinction of personality while doing this work. So to explore the human aspect in the historical context is definitely a challenge. And here, to meet this challenge, you have to do a little bit of hard work. Secondly, the goal was to reach out to the larger audience, because people in West Bengal were not familiar with Pacharang Chola, or in down south people were not familiar with Pacharang Chola. So the purpose was to reach out to the larger audience, and maybe the book has done well even in France or in London or New York or Australia, which Pacharang Chola could not have done. So to me, I think it is also the effort to liberate Meera from one medium to another, not medium, but language. Then another important thing is that if we look at translation, in English, it means something else. Anuvad means something else. And Tarjuma means altogether different. So if we start looking at translation in different nuances of the languages, then to me it is not a pure translation, but rather a little bit of transcreation. Because I was given the liberty to transcreate by the writer. So that is what all I have to say. Thank you.
Yes, from Anuvad
Professor,
to Tarzuma to Vivarthanam or change or transcreation, it has been a long journey.
yeah.
Here's another question from Dr. Siddharth Singh, and he says that it's a tradition of Rajputana, not just of Mewar. Then what is the need to limit her in a micro-identity? Was it not a traditional way of offering oneself to God with all the ornaments and good clothes in Bhakti tradition? What about Meera as an enlightened yogini?
Hada Sahab, would you like to answer, or Professor Shitanshu ji?
Meera as an enlightened yogini.
I think the meaning of a word,
Yeah.
as we know, comes out of the difference from another word. Part of it might be the same sound, but only when a part of the sound differs, the meaning arises. Saussure has famously said, the boy kisses the girl and boy kills the girl. The sentences may look very much alike, but the kisses and kills, the deviation, produces meaning, and what deviant meanings. So yes, there is a pan-Rajasthan-ness about Meera. There is a pan-Indian-ness about Meera. And there is a universality about Meera. But the flavor of Meera as a person, as a poet, as a rebel, as a bhakta, that special flavor, that rasa, comes out only when you place her in the specific context of time and place, of history and geography. So it is this uniqueness that one would like to understand and enjoy about any person, not just any poet, but any person. And there is this relatedness. The context is also there. But without text, what is the fun of the context? So I think right at the beginning, I said, who decides whether to read a translation or not? Well, I decide as the reader. So ultimately, my own take is that context is fine, no problem. But it is a text, the uniqueness of the text, of every poem, in fact. Meera's poems are not kind of, Wallace Stevens, I think once wanted to call his collected poems whole of harmonium. And people said, no, whole of the harmonium, don't go in for whole of the harmonium. And then let's hear each tune and the uniqueness of the tune. Linger, stay with it for a long time. So, Radhe Tara Dungariya par bole jhina mor. Mor hi bole, bapaiya hi bole. Koyal kare kal shor. तो मैं जो सुनता हूँ तो सारे पंखियों का कोई सिम्फनी नहीं सुनता हूँ, मोर को सुनता हूँ, मोर दूर दूर है इसलिए झीना मोर है, तो उसका ज्योग्राफी भी मेरे पास आती है, क्योंकि पास वाला मोर तो बहुत कर्कश होता है, तो झीना मोर, तो मोर ही बोले बपैया ही बोले, तो बपैया तो अलग है और मोर का आवाज और बपैया का आवाज को कुछ अलग अलग है वो, और कोयल करे कलशोर, वो कोयल कहाँ आई ग्रीष्म वाली और मोर कहाँ आया वो वर्षा ऋतु वाला, तो हर जरा सीजन को अलग अलग रहने दो, और हर को you should have an infinity for every poem, for every line. You must have infinite time with yourself. That kind of savoring of this thing. So I think I would, for whatever it is worth, I would go in for the uniqueness. I would go in for the text rather than the context.
You put it so beautifully, Professor Yashaschan, and I would like to quote 2 lines from your poem, Yes, where you say it costs to say yes in this land of yes and no.
Yeah.
And it is this midway that defines Meera, that, gives a specific space to her, because I have said yes to that emptiness, and emptiness is fullness in Meera. There are a series of questions, but I think we've had a long discussion and it has been an invigorating session where students and teachers have joined us. And I'm so grateful that Professor Madav Hada, Padamshri, Professor Shitanshu, Yashaschan, and Pradeep agreed to be a part of this discussion. I would now like to invite Professor O.N. Upadhyay to propose a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you. Ma'am, can I say something? I mean, we feel really honored and obliged to your entire department and the way your department is progressing in the field of English literary studies, and you have brought us together. So it is entirely the honor for all 3 of us, because it was such a great session that it has never happened earlier. In this way, we were sharing some new ideas and something new was emerging even for us as participants. So because of the participation of your audience, your students, your colleagues, they have been marvelous audience to give us very patient listening, and we could say something which we have never said in any other panel discussion. I hope that your team might have recorded this, because I would like to listen the whole discussion once again, because you came up with such good questions and queries right from the beginning when Professor Shitanshu ji was going to say something, and you are familiar with his poetry and you are familiar with his writings. That is icing on the cake. And of course, Professor Hada has also said some new things regarding Meera in this panel discussion. So on behalf of all three of us, we stand honored for you, and we salute you for this marvelous session.
Thank you, sir. We are all,
Thank you.
entire department is here.
Thank you very
and,
much. Thank you, ma'am.
We are all very grateful that you accepted our invitation. And I would like to invite Professor O.N. Upadhyay for a formal vote of thanks.
Please.
Professor Upadhyay.
Pranam, sir.
Namaste, Upadhyay ji. आप दिखाई दें? आपका कैमरा ऑन नहीं है.
Visible, sir?
अभी विजिबल हो जाएंगे अगर आपने ऑन किया
Yes,
है.
you are. Yes, you are.
Yeah.
तो सर सुधांशु यशचंद्रा जी, प्रोफेसर माधव हाडा जी, प्रोफेसर प्रदीप त्रिखा, my elder brother, Honorable Head Department of English, Professor Ranu Nial ma'am, faculty members, research scholars, students, and audience. On behalf of Department of English and Modern European Languages, University of Lucknow, I extend my hearty thanks to all dignitaries of this session and all the audience and faculty members. I humbly place my vote of thanks to Padamshri, Professor Shitanshu Yashchandra, an academic saint and a young eloquent poet, translator, what he is not, to spare some time from his busy schedule to grace this occasion. He described beautifully elements of myth, history, and poetry in the works of Meera versus Meera. I'm also thankful to the writer, author of this work, Professor Madav Hada, who talks of cultural dialectics and describes Dwarika as noun, sangya, to highlight and to make cultural mindset free from the Western perspective. I am also grateful to Professor Pradeep Trekhaji, my elder brother, who talks of cultural negotiations in between two languages. Actually, it is not a translation, as he mentioned honestly, that it is a transcreation of the work. I'm also thankful to all the research scholars and students of my department who are really the gems of all the programs and activities of the department. I'm also thankful to faculty members who always encourage us to organize such activities in the department. I'm also thankful to the gem of and to our head of department, whom I have no word to say anything, because under her stewardship, I think we are conducting and organizing activities and functions regularly in the department by dignitaries. Ultimately, at last but not the least, I express my deep sense of gratitude to you all with the humble request, Gacchatu Bhavan Punaragamanaya Cha. We humbly request you to come to the department and to honor us and to enlighten our students again and again. Thank you all. Namaskar.
Thank you. Can we have a group picture, please? Group photograph. Just a quick one. Thank you, Professor Upadhyay.
Thank you.
Please join us for a group photograph.
Yes, we are there.
Yeah. Yes, please. So thank you for joining us. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Pranam, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.